So, why would you even want an IRA? Well, you may not after you watch this.
Companies out here are not being truthful and honest around the full picture. People say go get you a Roth IRA and they start putting their last year it was 6,500 and 7,500 or whatever that dollar amount was last year. Now it's 7,000 and 8,000 that you're able to contribute into into an IRA or a Roth IRA. So everyone went out and got one. And I've got clients who have had them for 5, 6 years. I've had several who have commented, but it's not growing. I've got the Roth IRA, I've got the IRA, I've been contributing my $6,000 to it, but it's not growing. And my normal question is usually, what is it invested in? And there's almost this look of invested. I'm supposed to invest it. Like I thought if I contributed to my IRA or I contributed to my Roth IRA, it was going to do something. There's so many banks that offer these. There's a lot of times that things get lost in translation. And so what ends up happening is I get a call going, hey, I want an IRA so that I can start investing in some of these mutual funds, stocks, and bonds. And I start asking questions like, why? What is the reason for you wanting to be able to invest in these things? Hey, I want to grow retirement income. I want to, do all of these things. And so as we started peeling back the layers, what we start to learn is one, either they fully understand how an IRA works, or there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's just so much clarity needing to be provided to understand what this vehicle is and what it isn't. Whether we're talking about a traditional IRA or Roth IRA, to me, they're the same as far as what you can do with them. Yes, one is more better tax advantage than the other, but the bottom line is we're talking about an IRA in general. And so as we talk about how to generate, how to create an IRA, what does that look like compared to the traditional or the Roth IRA that you would actually have with Fidelity? And what that ultimately looks like is, hey, we're going to take that same IRA you have sitting at Fidelity and we're going to move it to a new custodian. Why? We're going to move that money to a new custodian and generate and or create a brand new IRA for you. We're going to create a brand new IRA using, and all you need to be able to create an IRA is earned income. So anyone can have an IRA. Now, if you make too much money, that will impact what you can contribute into an IRA. But the moral of the story is anyone can have one. Any earned income can fund an IRA. So what we would do is move those funds from that Fidelity account, move it into a brand new self-directed IRA. But just because it's moved to a self-directed IRA does not mean you now have checkbook control over those dollars. That does not mean that you can now invest in non-traditional investments. That does not mean you can get your money out of the market, is my point. The IRA has to have some structure. And that structure is created by the IRA itself purchasing an LLC. And again, that's the IRA. The funds from the IRA are going to purchase a brand new LLC. And that LLC, what happens with that LLC is that LLC has its own EIN number. And when the IRA purchases the LLC, which has an EIN number, we will then use that EIN number to open up a checking account. And then what happens is then you're able to transfer the funds from the IRA into the checking account of the LLC, which now gives you full control over these dollars. Just because the funds are now sitting in that IRA, that doesn't mean that they're going to magically go to work for you. No different than when you open up a regular IRA with Fidelity or Equity Trust or whoever. So the bottom line is once these dollars are here, you still have to take action. And just so we're clear, I've talked a lot about IRA, traditional dollars versus Roth dollars. And I just wanted to remind everyone what I mean. Whether I'm talking about Roth or traditional IRAs, I'm just talking about when you're taxed. For a traditional IRA, you're taxed at the end. You're taxed when you go to take a distribution. As far as Roth, you're actually taxed in the beginning. So if you're investing, if you're contributing $1,000 a year into your IRA and you pay taxes on that $1,000 at the end of every year, then what you've done is you converted that $1,000 into a Roth dollar amount. And now anything that grows from that Roth dollar amount over time, when you go to take a distribution, that distribution is then tax free. Versus if you're putting in traditional dollars, meaning you're putting in that $1,000 and you're not being taxed on that $1,000 that's going in. Once you go to take a distribution, then you will be taxed on the distribution itself. And just so we're clear, Roth is a condition. Your money being converted from traditional to Roth is simply a condition. It is not something that you have to ask to do. It's something that you can choose to do. And when you choose to do it, you can actually use that money at that moment to be Roth. The condition that has to be met, though, is at the end of the tax year. So if I converted that $1,000 today to Roth, at the end of the tax year, so on December 31st or whenever I do my taxes for 2024, I will then 1099 R myself for the amount that I converted. And then the second step is my account has to be in place for 5 years. Once my Roth account is in place for 5 years, anything that happened with that $1,000 from now to the 5-year mark has now been growing tax-free. And then by the age of 59 and a half, I can now access all of those funds tax-free for the rest of my life. And so my point in sharing this is the structure. The structure of an IRA is pretty simple, but an IRA is just a glorified savings account. And it does not have the capability for you to be able to self-direct it and invest in what you want without structure. So what I do is I apply that structure. And as he also stated in this video, contribution amounts. Contribution amounts are $7,000 if you're under the age of 50 and $8,000 if you're over the age of 50. But again, just because you contributed $8,000 into your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, your self-directed Roth IRA, or your self-directed traditional IRA doesn't matter. Just because you contributed that $8,000 doesn't mean that that account is going to do anything for you. You have to put that money to work.
Who is retiring off of $7,000 or $8,000 invested a year?
To your point, in contributing that $7,000 or $8,000 a year, where you put it matters. Can you put away $7,000 or $8,000 a year and retire off that money at some point? You can. But it's going to take a long time, some diligence on your part, and the vehicle that you put it in matters. And so what I'm talking about is when people reach out to me and go, okay, I follow, I want to get my money out of the market. I want to move my IRA into a better position so that I can have more control of it. Okay, I understand it requires some structure. I understand it requires my IRA to purchase an LLC. But now what can I invest in? And again, I talk about non-traditional investments a lot. What can I invest in? Most of the time, most of the people I talk to, they want to invest in real estate. Some form of some fix and flip, some apartment complex, some form of real estate is usually the objective. And why is that? And that's because 90% of the people that I run into want to invest in real estate. And that's mainly because 90% of the people who are millionaires in this country became so through real estate. So it's a lucrative opportunity. But people don't realize having an IRA and investing that IRA into real estate opportunities can gravely impact your ability to grow significant dollars inside of your IRA. And most people don't understand why. But you have to ask yourself, why is it that I am flooded with these advertisements from Equity Trust and this gentleman that we showed and IRA Services and all of these different companies promoting IRAs? Like, why is that? Who benefits? What is the impact? But again, my point is, this is not an exhaustive list of what you can invest in. This is a very, very short list. Matter of fact, your imagination is much larger than what this list could possibly be. The key piece to remember is there's some certain things that you cannot invest in. But as far as what you can, really your imagination will dictate all of that. And so what I just wanted to highlight was an example of what it would look like to invest your IRA, whether it's traditional or Roth, invest your IRA into a real estate opportunity. And I wanted to highlight specifically the impact of UBIT. But what we're talking about doing is you've got $100,000 in your Roth IRA. Again, it's a Roth IRA, so you're building tax-free return. So you've got $100,000 in that Roth IRA. You're looking to borrow. You're looking to leverage. You don't have enough to buy the property that's worth $200,000. So you need an additional $100,000 from somewhere else. So you're going to borrow $100,000 from elsewhere. Where it is, where it's from really doesn't matter. It can be from a bank, it can be from a person, it can be from me. But you have $100,000, you're looking to borrow $100,000 to be able to purchase a property for $200,000, which will then sell for $300,000. And the question is, what's the impact of UBIT? So what is UBIT? Unrelated Business Income Tax. So in order to understand the unrelated business income tax, we got to take a step back in time. So we're talking Great Depression, World War II, Betty Boop, big band or swing music, and Superman makes his introduction into the comics. A wealthy gentleman who made his fortune by milling sugarcane passes away. In his estate planning, he leaves his sugar mill because he doesn't have any family, doesn't have anyone to pass it on to. He leaves his sugar mill to his alma mater,
Confused by this generous donation, the university is confused as to what it is they can do with the sugar mill. Do we sell it? One of their finance fellows just makes a small suggestion. What if we run it? What if we produce sugar? What if we do what it's designed to do? Why would this be a positive thing to do? Why does this make sense? What could possibly be the benefit of running this mill, given the fact that it's a university that's not their main role and responsibility? So there's a headache associated with that. Like, what would be the point or the purpose? Well, think about it. It's a university. What does that mean? Universities are tax exempt. So what does that mean? If the university owns a sugar mill and the university runs that sugar mill, any profits made from the sugar mill is tax exempt. There's money to be made here, a lot of money to be made here. And again, they're a university, so because of a university's tax exempt status, and this sugar mill now belongs to this university, they can now produce tax exempt. So they do just that. And word gets around that this university is running this mill void of all taxes. The neighboring sugar mill owners gets word of this, and they start to complain because it's not fair that this university is exempt from taxes, but I'm not. You're not, but this university is. We're doing the exact same job. We're producing the exact same item. It's the exact same processes within each facility. It's cookie cutter, no different, but one is tax exempt and one is not. It's not fair. Fast forward to 1950, and the Revenue Act of 1950 is now passed. And as a result, tax-exempt entities such as universities, soon to be included tax-exempt products such as Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, have now been included into UBIT. UBIT, UBTI, and UDFI are provisions added to the Revenue Act of 1950, designed to eliminate an unfair competitive advantage that was being enjoyed by the tax-exempt entities and organizations over their tax-paying counterparts in the non-exempt world. That's a mouthful. And this was later amended to include IRAs. But what does all of that mean in English? UBIT was introduced to level the playing field and make it fair for the average American and business owners who were not allotted tax-exempt status. Oh, and did I mention? UBIT is an annual tax paid on your profits. And are you okay with being taxed up to 37% in some cases? I'm not. How do you avoid UBIT, UBTI, UDFI? Well, in most cases, you really can't. There are strategies you can implement as a result of the tax code changes from 2017, and that will allow you to reduce the impact of UBIT. But as far as eliminating UBIT, that's a challenge. So you can get that 37% down to somewhere closer to 21% as a result of the tax code change. There is one exception though, and I've already mentioned this, as it specifically relates to real estate leveraged inside of a retirement account. And I am referencing using a non-recourse loan to bridge the gap between what you currently have in your retirement account and what you actually need for the deal. So as it relates to leveraging real estate transaction inside of a self-directed 401k, whether that's a self-directed Roth 401k or a self-directed 401k with traditional dollars, UBIT does not apply.
Where could this impact somebody beyond a sugar mill?
What you have to remember about Roth is this. Roth limited your contributions, meaning there's only so much you can, like IRAs, you're limited on what you can contribute, but there is no limit on what you can make. And that's the difference here. The difference is because some of us are limited to having an IRA regardless. Like, I don't want you to think that, hey, just because I'm talking more about how UBIT and other things impacted by an IRA, that doesn't mean you can't have one or you shouldn't get one. They are still solid vehicles, but my issue is, custodians out here, companies out here are not being truthful and honest around the full picture. You should know everything associated with an IRA, everything associated with the 401k, and how that can impact you so that you can make the best decision. Instead, what's happening is custodians are focused on IRAs because they make a lot of money off of them.
Where would somebody want to beware?
So, and I think that's kind of this example that we're walking through. It is when you don't have enough in your retirement account to be able to make the investment that you want, and you need to bridge that gap with someone else's money. Whenever you're looking to be able to take advantage of an opportunity, regardless of the size of the opportunity, meaning you could only have $5,000 in your IRA. That $5,000 can still purchase a property for $500,000.
Yeah,
all it takes is leverage.
Tell me a video that you have seen out there where they have talked about a Roth 401k.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't. You hear everybody talking about a Roth IRA, and it's just because they're parroting other people. Sequoia said, I have a whole MBA and I have never heard of UBIT in any class.
And again, why would you?
Yeah.
Like at what point, it's no different than most people don't learn the 4% rule until it's time for them to retire. You won't learn about UBIT until you're impacted by it. What happens? What's the impact of UBIT on an opportunity where I only have 100,000 in my IRA and it's Roth, so I'm building tax-free profit, but I'm looking to leverage or borrow $100,000 to be able to buy a $200,000 opportunity. I buy that opportunity. I then sell that opportunity. I make $100,000 profit. Like, I'm excited. I'm ecstatic. But what ends up happening is the IRS comes along and says, wait a minute, it's not fair for you to be able to use your tax-free vehicle to be able to make the same investment that Joe Public can't use or can't have the same leverage. Meaning, just like my IRA bought this property for $200,000 using a non-recourse loan, I could have personally done it. You could have personally done it. You could have borrowed $100,000 from a bank and bought that same property. But had you done it, what would have happened? You would have gotten hit by capital gains, right? There would have been a tax implication from you using your normal savings account and borrowing money from a bank and buying the same property. So to level the playing field, the IRS comes along and says, we're not going to allow you to get away with it. So UBIT is going to come along and tax 50% of your profits. Why 50% of your profits? Well, in the purchase price of this property, I only had 100,000. So I had to borrow another 100. So if the purchase price was 200,000, I only had 100. I had to get 50% of the purchase price through a non-recourse loan. So because 50% of the purchase price was used with a non-recourse loan, the IRS comes along and taxes 50% of my profits for 37%. And again, why? Because it levels the playing field between me using my Roth IRA or me using my traditional IRA for that matter. It levels the playing field against those who don't have that same option. But if we were to do the exact same investment using a 401k, and again, you heard it in the video, if we would do the exact same investment using a 401k, but before I kind of dig into that, what does that even mean to create a 401k? What does that process look like? How is that process different from an IRA? Well, to create a 401k, what we would do is move your previous employer's plan into a new self-directed 401k, meaning I would have to build. And the creation of a 401k is actually pretty simple, meaning a 401k is no different than a trust. So in essence, what I'm creating for you is a trust. And the beauty of a trust is a trust has its own EIN number. A 401k comes equipped with its own EIN number, and that's to include the 401k that you currently have with your job. Your 401k with your current employer is already structured to be able to be self-directed. The reason you can't self-direct it is because your employer and the custodian that your employer has won't allow you to. So it's not that it's not capable. It is already a 401k is a trust. And so what happens is we're going to move your previous employer plan into a new self-directed 401k that we would create for you. And because that 401k has its own EIN number, that EIN number is no different than a social. We would take that EIN number, open up a checking account. And so we would connect that checking account to the 401k that we created for you. And now you have full checkbook control over those 401k dollars. And again, just because you have a 401k instead of an IRA, as it relates to UBIT is not impacted by a 401k. And I get this. I used to get this question a lot when I would present in front of these large crowds. It's okay, I get it. If I've got an IRA or a Roth IRA, UBIT's going to come along and tax my profits at 37%. But why won't that happen with the what is it about a 401k that won't allow it to be taxed the same way? And in all of the research that I've done on this topic over the years, the best thing I could find was this. The only reason the 401k is not taxed the same way is because the lobbyists for 401ks asked to be excluded. So because the lobbyists for 401ks asked Congress to be excluded, they were. And as a result, 401ks are not impacted by UBIT. So you could do this exact same deal inside of a 401k. And notice, this is a self-directed 401k, not self-directed Roth 401k. So this isn't even Roth dollars. This is traditional dollars. So just having a 401k alone allows you to increase your profits by about 37% because you're not impacted by UBIT. And then, yes, if this was a Roth 401k, it's even better. So it's tax-free profit plus not being impacted by UBIT. So bottom line is just having a 401k allows you to kind of exclude yourself from or not be impacted by UBIT. And so just to kind of highlight some of the differences between an IRA and 401k, I wanted to start here with one requires a custodian, meaning the IRA is just a glorified savings account. In order to have the structure necessary to be able to invest in what you want, those non-traditional investments, it requires support. It requires structure. So we have to build that structure in, which means it also requires a bank. It requires a custodian support. And so an IRA requires a custodian, but a 401k does not. But what does that even mean? And it kind of speaks to a conversation that I had earlier today as it relates to custodians. Custodian is just a fancy word for bank. And when you think about it, we all have experience with the first one, meaning it's a custodian that you can only invest in what they sell. So if you have your money in any bank, any major bank across this country, that's an active custodian. You're paying transactional fees, you're paying maintenance fees, you're paying balance transfer fees. You can only, if you open up some type of account with this company, you can, if you're able to invest like from a Fidelity, a Vanguard, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, you can only invest in the mutual fund stocks and bonds that they offer if they offer mutual fund stocks and bonds. If we're talking a company like Bank of America, then your Bank of America account is only useful at Bank of America, meaning your checking account or your savings account can only do what Bank of America allows you to do with your checking account or savings account. You would actually have to go to Merrill Edge if you wanted to then invest that money in some of the other things that Bank of America offers. But what can you invest in with Merrill Edge? You can only invest in the mutual fund stocks and bonds that they offer. So moral of the story is all of us are familiar with the active custodian of number one. Those of us who are in this self-directed space, and those of us getting served like the initial video that we saw, any of you who have a self-directed IRA, any of you who have a self-directed IRA, 9 times out of 10, you're working with a custodian that will allow you to invest in what it is you want, but they have to approve your ability to be able to do so. So they are an active custodian with passive tendencies. Meaning you can invest in what you want, but you have to get their permission in order to proceed. And an equity trust is a prime example of that. Meaning if you wanted to buy a property using your self-directed IRA with equity trust, you can do it, but you have to provide the portfolio to equity trust to allow them to go through it. And my issue here is if you're any type of investor, you know time is not something that you have a lot of as it relates to investing in what you want. And so things have to move timely. If I've already done the homework to understand whether or not this is an investment that makes sense for me, do you think that the custodian that you're going to send that portfolio to has the same sense of urgency? 9 times out of 10, they do not. And so what ends up happening is deals are lost because of the time that it takes to get that approval. Whereas the self-directed retirement accounts that we create have passive custodians, meaning you are the one you are the sole decision maker in this process to be able to invest in what you want. So if it's, as it relates to a self-directed 401k, whether it's Roth or traditional dollars, any action you want to take, you decide what that action needs to be and how to take that action. There's no one standing over your shoulder, or there's no one standing over your shoulder telling you what to do, and there's no one that you have to wait on permission from to be able to take action. So again, understanding what type of custodian you have also determines how strong are the capabilities of the account that you have as well. I bring this up and I'm still showing 2023 contributions because I still have clients opening 2023 accounts in 2024. So understanding what those contributions are matter. So if you remember, if you go back to the IRA, contribution limits for an IRA, $7,000 and $8,000 for 2024. But for 2024, as it relates to a 401k, those contribution limits are $23,000 if you're under the age of 50, right? Plus $6,500 if you're over the age of 50, right? So it's $30,000 if you're over the age. And then, and actually, that's a typo. That shouldn't be 65. That should be 75. And it's $30,000, 30,500 if you're over the age of 50. And then if you add the match, which is 25% of your income up to $46,000, that 25% of your income up to 46,000 is the additional match, which means that total contribution limit is actually 76,000, not 75.5. It's actually 76,000. So there's a typo in here. But the moral of the story is the contribution limit is extremely higher. What is that? 9 times higher? 9 times higher than it would be inside of a regular IRA or a Roth IRA. And then when you're looking at 2023, the reason the 2023 is there is because you do have the ability to open a 401k now prior to the start of tax season, which is I think April 1st or April 15th, whichever one. I honestly don't know what the date is. I've been telling clients to get it done before April 1st. But if you open a 401k before April 1st, you're actually able to contribute 2023 contributions into it to reduce your taxable income for 2023 as well. Still, again, up until April 1st, you're still able to do that. So the 2023 contributions will 22.5 if you're under the age of 50. And then obviously you add that 6,500. Now here's where you do add the 6,500 catch-up contribution if you're over the age of 50, plus an additional 25% of your income, which equates to about, I think the limit is 43.5 for any catch up or any profit sharing, or some people call it a match contribution on your contribution amount for 2023.
Why would anybody, just looking at these figures alone, why would anybody not be talking about a self-directed 401k? Did anybody tell you? Because they don't know about it. And the reason why they don't know about it is because they are not attached to your income. They're not attached to your outcome either.
The only thing that I had left from here was just kind of highlight the differences. So to continue on as it relates to the differences between an IRA and 401k. So we talked about custodian, we talked about higher contribution limits. The other one is if you have an IRA and you wanted to be able to get money out of it before you hit retirement age, the only way you can do that is through a taxable and sometimes penalizable distribution. Whereas with the 401k, you're able to borrow against it. And we talk about this a lot. You're able to leverage your 401k for 50% of what's in it up to 50,000. You have 5 years to pay it back. If you use it for the purchase of your primary residence, you've got 15 years. But this is one of those vehicles where we talk a lot about velocity banking. If you're looking for a way to be able to get yourself into a more positive cash flow position, versus using a credit card, you're able to borrow against your own 401k and be able to do the same. And you set the terms on when that dollar amount is paid back. And then IRA, individual retirement account. You can have one, your spouse can have one, but those two can't commingle. Whereas with a 401k, you both can commingle all of your previous employer plans, which means it gives you a much larger pool to be able to contend with, much larger pool to be able to invest from. And then obviously we talked about UBIT. UBIT applies to one. UBIT does not apply to a 401k. IRA, we also talked about it doesn't have the structure required to be able to have the control that you want. So the IRA itself has to purchase an LLC. And again, it requires a custodian. So when you introduce a custodian, when you introduce an LLC, you're introducing fee structures. So it requires a bank, it requires someone to hold your hand through this process. And so therefore, you cannot get away from LLC fees. You also can't get away from custodial fees. Whereas with the 401k, because it's a trust, we can eliminate a lot of, we have eliminated those by one, negotiating them out, but two, a custodian is not required. So therefore, there's no reason to have those fees in place. And then the last one is the income limitations. And you don't hear a lot about this either as it relates to those who are promoting IRAs and Roth IRAs. If you make too much money, you cannot contribute to your IRA. Whereas with a 401k, it doesn't matter how much, there are no limitations on how much you can make personally to be able to contribute to that 401k, which is a big one for me.